meeting of the Salt Lake User Group. If you are not aware, we have a group on Meetup. So we are organizing things there. We're trying to use the Google Group now less. So you can find us on meetup.com where we're announcing things there. We're really happy to have Barton Poulson here today to talk to us about bridging the statistics gap. Before we get started, I just want to announce that there is a class that starts in here, I think at 1 p.m. So we will try to get out of here by 1 p.m. and we can chat and mill around afterwards out there. Our next meeting is in April, about this same time, like a Thursday lunch, and we're having Mike Levy, who is a data scientist at Health Catalyst. He's going to be talking about exploratory data analysis with the Multiverse. So that sounds like a great one, should be fun. So he'll be here, and it's not going to be here, it's going to be at IHC's Intermountain Medical Center, which is in Marie. So we're going to be there in April. So we're excited to have Bart today, and we'll hope to see you there in April. So Bart, thanks so much.
Thank you. I'm going to ask if the two people who are hiding behind the pillar, unless you need to hide, you may want to move over, one way or the other. Thanks for coming. I'm here to talk to you today about something that is related to R, but not exactly the same. And I have an agenda here. First, I'm going to talk to you about an application called Jamovi, which, by the way, is a word that comes from the first names of the three developers. I'm also going to talk about a package that they've written for R called Jamovi, which replicates the functionality of the application in R, because the application is based on R. And then I'm also going to make a short appeal to R developers, which I know applies to at least some of you. But first, I want to start by asking about you guys. What is, can you tell me what kind of data you work with on a at least occasional basis? And where you work and the kind of data you work with, just so I have some idea.
E-commerce data and Overstock.
Okay, Julie.
Like web data.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I'm a food biologist. Data.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so electronic medical record data, data.
Okay, cool.
Patient data and Health Catalyst.
All right.
Any data I can get my hands on. I'm a graduated, so I'm a student.
All right, excellent. What's your program?
It was bioinformatics. So.
All right.
I work at the U, invest in machine learning.
Okay, great.
I'm applying for my genomics data.
Okay.
HR data.
All right, Andrew.
And I'm also electronic medical record data.
Well, a little about me. I'm a little different from a lot of people in the data science world. First off, my degree is in psychology, not clinical psychology. Social psychology is a research field, and I'm a professor at Utah Valley University. I've been teaching for over 20 years, primarily teaching introductory statistics to very frightened behavioral science students who don't want to be there. And I'm also I create videos for LinkedIn Learning, which is formerly lynda.com, although they both exist. And I just found out that one of my courses was in the top 20 for, they got like 7,000 or 8,000 courses. One of my one that introduces data science was in the top 20 for last year. And I actually produce a whole bunch of courses for them. Right now we're working on ones that are tiny little introductory ones to say the data science of economics and finance, the data science of sports management, the data science, we have about 8 in this series. I also have my own company, datalab.cc, which does online training. And I have an organization that meets on a very rare basis called Data Charette, which is a sort of a nonprofit service organization. I'll mention more about that a little bit later. Let me start by talking about the Jamovi application, which is a recent thing. Now, it's a free application. You download it at jamovi.org. And Windows, Mac, Linux. And I don't know if you guys, but it's similar to another program you've never heard of called JASP, which actually stands for Jonathan's Awesome Statistics Program. That was headed in Netherlands, and it has a very strong emphasis on Bayesian statistics. If you're trying to help somebody else do Bayes, this is going to be one of the best ways possible to do it because it's so accessible. But Jamovi split off from JASP, basically dropped all the Bayesian stuff. It looks very similar, but they completely rewrote the code to base it on HTML5. And this is what it's an application that looks a little bit like this. So we have a spreadsheet layout. I'm gonna open up the application. I'll run through it live. But you've got a spreadsheet layout here. You import a CSV file, and then you've got some commands up on the top. You've got a GUI there, and you've got your output here on the right side. Now, when you're working it looks a lot like this. Have any of you ever used SPSS? Okay. In the SPSS stands for Statistical Package for the Social Sciences, although IBM now says it stands for nothing. But in psychology and the other social sciences, SPSS is very common. It's the tool of choice for most of my colleagues. And what the Jamovi people have done, most of whom have a background in psychology, is they've replicated the menus to SPSS. So for students who've had any experience with that, this is a lot easier to use. This is almost exactly the same. And then you get the functionality. Whoop. And there's a few reasons why having this Jamovi application is significant and why I am throwing away a lot of the previous work that I've done and I'm starting over again with this one. The first reason is, of the perks is it's free and it's open source. I've had an interesting discussion with a colleague of mine in another department who feels that it's an unsettled question, it's an unresolved issue, but he feels it may be ethically untenable to teach students to work on software that there's no way they could afford it when they get out of school. So for instance, Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop, unless you're going to do that full time, that's expensive. And since my students never make any money, anything that's over like $10 a month is really expensive. So now, like R solves that problem. It's free, but it's really scary to my students. I'm teaching a group to go through R right now, and it's really scary for people who have no technical experience whatsoever. But Jamovi, unlike SPSS, which can be horrendously expensive, Jamovi is free. It's also open source. It's really easy to use. It's the drop-down menus, and I know those of us who are used to R, you sort of trash talk GUIs because they do restrict the number of things that you can do, but they make those things much, much, much easier. The interesting thing is Jamovi is based on R, and to a certain extent, I have a Macintosh computer, so I've never been able to use R Commander. I've never seen it. I know it exists, that somebody has created a GUI for R. In one sense, Jamovi is a GUI for R, if you have students who want to use that. And then the really fascinating thing about it is all the functionality in Jamovi is replicated in one R package. And there's a reason that the JMV package is really important for, and it's because when all of the stuff that Jamovi does is in one single package, it makes it a lot easier to teach people. So for instance, the one package, you can go through and do any of you teach statistics? Okay, where do you teach?
The U.
Which program?
It's in the business school for OIS.
And what level are the students?
Second semester.
Undergrad?
Yes.
Okay, have they had statistics of some kind before?
They presumably had a first semester.
one imagines. You never know. I'll tell you, there's a really strange thing at my school. The class that I teach, Behavioral Science 3010, is a third-year course for behavioral science students. There's also at my university Math 1040, which is statistics in the math department. Now, it's a 1,000 level course. I teach a 3,000. As far as we can tell, the classes are about 98% the same, but they don't count one for another. Math 1040 fulfills the math GE requirement, so a lot of people take it. I've had students who take both of them on the same day back to back, which is kind of frustrating to me. But here's one of my colleagues actually ran some data on this. People who take Math 1040 do no better and no worse in Behavioral Science 3010 than people who haven't taken it. There's like zero transfer from one course to the other. It's pathetic. There's like zero transfer. And so anything you can do to make people's lives easier is a really good thing. Now, Jamovi contains all the functions you need for an introductory statistics course. It does descriptive statistics and plots, t-tests, ANOVA, that's the analysis of variance. Any of you ever done an analysis of variance? Okay, if you had a background in experimental research, this is your bread and butter, okay? Because you set up an experimental condition, a control condition, and you look at these, you're looking for those interactions. In my field, everything in the world is an analysis of variance. Correlation, regression, including, by the way, binomial, logistic regression. Because, for instance, if you're doing that in SPSS, you have to pay extra to do logistic regression. It's not cool. The binomial test, chi-square test of several different kinds, reliability. Do any of you do Cronbach's alpha? If you're in psychology and you administer a survey and you need to combine, like 10 questions and collapse them into one, you always do something called Cronbach's alpha first, which is a way of assessing sort of the average correlation to make sure it's okay to combine them. It's closely, well, there's also principal components analysis, exploratory factor analysis, and another kicker is confirmatory factor analysis, which again, is not even possible in SPSS on a Mac. You have to have the Windows version because you have to purchase AMOS to do structural equation modeling. So I've never done it in SPSS, obviously. And by the way, it's based on the Levon package that runs in R. So, but the point is this: if you want to teach people to work with statistics and you want to be able to do R eventually, you can teach the entire course using Jamovi, and then all of this functionality is built into a single package, and then so they don't have to worry a whole lot about how they're going to integrate stuff. The real trick about Jamovi is that it has a syntax mode, and where it will show you the syntax for everything that you calculate. Let me go over to the program itself, which is now super tiny. I have to change my screen resolution. Sorry, I wasn't anticipating this. Oh my goodness. You know what? Okay, scaled. All right, bigger, better. Okay, there we go. So this is what it looks like normally. You've got the data over here. You've got the stuff over here. One of the nice things is you can come here and you can, under the data tab, you can actually define the types and you can define labels for each of the variables. So for instance, this one right here was originally coded as an indicator variable 0, 1, and I just gave it the codes of no and yes. Which means I don't have to duplicate the variables because some of the programs I work with, some of them can deal with text labels, some of them can't, and so I often will duplicate the variables. And you don't have to do that here, and this is where you change them, you can combine the groups, and you, anyhow, very convenient. So you can define it that way, but we come over here, we go to syntax mode, And now you got the commands, and you just copy them and paste them into R. So for instance, here I am in the syntax mode, and here I am in R. I've got all the exact same stuff that I've done. Load the Jamovi package. By the way, do you guys know about Pacman? Pacman is for package management, and it's super easy. I use it because once you have it loaded, you don't have to do the install and then require stuff. You just run Pacman, and I use Rio for importing data because you don't even have to specify the file type, and it gets it in. But I ran in some data, and I'm just gonna go like this, import the data. Oh, geez, sorry, I gotta load my packages. Okay, packages are loaded. Now I load the data. And then, you know, there's the head of my data. It's the same data that I have in Jamovi. And then I can start running things like, let me come back here. Here's the descriptives. It's going to give me those frequencies. It's going to give me those graphs. And I just come over here and run it. And it actually gives me the prettiest output I've ever had in the console. Although if the tables get too wide, it looks horrible. It wraps very poorly. We'll see what we can do about that. But the graphs are all right there. And, you know, interestingly, it's doing it in an alphabetical order as opposed to the ordered factor, which I'd specified in Jamovi. But anyhow, not a big deal. Point is, it's really easy to go through all of this, right? And that everything you do in Jamovi can be replicated in R. It's like when I teach people to use SPSS. You know, SPSS has drop-down menus, has a GUI, and you can do all of that. But I also tell people, never hit OK from the GUI, always hit paste. And then what it does is it takes the command syntax and puts that into a syntax file so you have it replicated and you can annotate it. Because you can run SPSS as code. And so I tell people, always save the code, then you can replicate it again really easily. And that's something you can do here with Jamovi. But another nice little trick is when you save your file, it saves the data and it saves the output, and it also saves all the commands. So when you go back to something, if I just click on this, it brings up the box, and I can make changes. Another nice thing is if you change the data that's in the little spreadsheet, it automatically updates any output that relies on that data, which is great because we realized we had a couple of cases that we meant to exclude in the analysis the other day. We just dropped them out, and it automatically updated all 20 analyses we had already done, all the way down. Saved a lot of time. But the reason I talk to you guys about this is not necessarily because I think you need it. You know how to use R. R is fabulous. Although I'll tell you, this, to me, I was doing an analysis for my colleague the other day. I spent about half an hour getting stuff set up in R, and I said, oh, screw it. And then I went and did everything in Jamovi in about 20 minutes. And the reason I did that, aside from the fact that it was faster for me, because what she was asking for was extremely basic, really fast and easy to do it. But the reason for that is I could then send her the file that has the data in its clean format. It has every command. It has all the output that I've done, and everything's there. And I can tell her, you can download the app, and you can open this up, and you can see everything I've done, exactly how I produced it. And in terms of consulting with people who are not statistically savvy, this is infinitely preferable to doing the work in R and handing it over to them. It's also preferable to doing it in Excel. I'm a very strong proponent of doing data in spreadsheets whenever possible because most people know how to use spreadsheets. But for this stuff, you know, as soon as it gets even remotely complicated, I switch over to an application like this. I generally only go to R if it's something that I can't do in this. Now, there's a lot of things. It sounds to me like for most of you, most of the stuff you do, you're going to need to be in R. But there is one other reason in terms of, you know, obviously, if you're teaching, I think this is very helpful. I teach my class. I wrote my own book. I created a million videos for the class. I've got the whole thing set up based on hand calculations because that's what my department required. I am lobbying to be able to do it with computers again. I used to do it with computers, then they took it away. And now I'm trying to get to do it again, which is I'm going to rewrite it all to be able to use this to get them through the program. The teaching is very important, and consulting and sharing your work with people who don't know how to use R and for whom it would be intimidating. This is a good way to do it. There is, I do want to make another, I have something else to say about this, if I recall correctly. Yeah, if you teach, this is huge. And if you consult with people who would be intimidated by R, this is big. And then my last thing I want to say here is there's an appeal to R developers. Now, have any of you ever written an R package? I know, okay, several of you. All right, have any of you ever opened up an R package? I mean, actually looked at the code that's inside it? Okay. Here's the deal, ready? This is a very big thing for Jamovi. They need your help because any R package could be converted into what's called a Jamovi module. That's a package that runs in Jamovi. So let me show you what that looks like. I'll come back here. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place. Let me go back to analyses, modules. And right now, there's a small collection of modules, generalized linear models, meta-analysis, mediation, moderation analysis. Those are all common in psychological research. This one I'd never heard of, the two one-sided tests, but here's the base R functions. You can just add all of them. Rand Wilcox, I love his work on robust statistics, and so they've replicated his package in here. But there's others that you can create, and then, now obviously in that case, they're not Jamovi functions, they are the package functions. So for instance, if I come down to here, I can use the scatter package, which does an enhanced scatter plot. So I load that one up, and then I do my scatter plot, and it should, there we go. Okay, so I've got the marginal box plots. You can also do density plots, and it allows you to do some things. What would be really, really nice is if in addition to these current ones, like Death Watch is their name for survival analysis. There's a lot more that you can do. I mean, have we passed 10,000 packages in R? All right. Past 12,000. Exponential growth. There are some that I would love to see ported to Jamovi so my colleagues can use them, like cluster analysis. Use that frequently, hierarchical cluster analysis in particular. K-nearest neighbors, decision trees, and maybe even random forests. Maps, meaning both kind of like GIS data, but also choroplots. Structural equation modeling is common in academic psychology, as is path analysis. Cross-validation, currently there's no functionality for that. Now, there's a reason, it's because in psychology, our data sets are so small, we can't afford to set aside, 20% or 30%. I mean, my dissertation had 199 cases, and it was considered really big. Tools for scraping data. Tools for accessing open data, and then, with you in mind, maybe even something for text analysis. So it does have to fit into the Jamovi cells, which may or may not work. But the idea is, when you do these, you can get more people adopting. Well, there's actually several, I think. What's in it for you? Number one, of course, you can get recognition. What's funny about this is, like everybody knows who developed ggplot2. It's Hadley. Hadley rules the world. He has not created the Jamovi module, and that person's name will be, on the module. You can take a package, develop the module. They have the resources. They have the instructions at the Jamovi website. Let me go back to that one, which is somewhere. Here's their website, and you click Developers Hub, it gets you right here, and then it tells you how to do it. Okay. I'm not a developer. I'm not working at this level, and I've got other things I'm working on, so I'm not going to do it. But I strongly support people who are comfortable with this to do it as a way, not just to get your name out in the package, so that is a big perk, but also facilitate our adoption. I don't know about you guys, but I make videos to train people to work with data, and I actually do sometimes stay awake at night wondering, is it okay for me to still be doing R? Because it seems like everybody I know has switched over to Python. And I think that's because of like who I'm hanging out with a little bit. Now, of course, at my school, the academic psychologists, they've never heard of either one, or rather they know R exists. They know R exists. They do not know that, they really seriously do not know that Python exists. And anyhow, to facilitate our adoption. So for those of us who are insecure about R's place in the world, because it has now dropped to 2nd place in the KD Nuggets survey, it's been 1st place up until last year. There's also the general goal of promoting data literacy. Anything that can make it easier for people to work with data is a very good thing. I work with people who don't know how to work with data. And it is this sort of thing where I tell them, calculating a sum is going to be helpful to you. I'm giving a presentation in a few weeks at the Mountain West Arts Conference. I go every year. My wife is a choreographer, and I work with artists, and they've had data presentations every now and then, and nobody gets anything out of it. And so I'm going there, and I'm literally going to talk to them about spreadsheets. I say, this is how to sum 2 numbers, this is how to make a bar chart, and this is why you want to do that. Now, with them, I'm only doing stuff that can be done in a spreadsheet. So we're kind of stopping. We're going to get to a line chart, maybe a scatter plot, but nothing beyond that. If we were doing any modeling whatsoever, I would actually go to this program next. Say, this is going to, because even though you can do regression in a spreadsheet, at that point, it's more work than it's worth. I remember I have a guy showed you how to do, he showed how to do K nearest neighbors in a spreadsheet. And I thought, that's just masochism. And the last thing is provide service. And this is where I want to give a little plug. If you're looking for an opportunity to develop some experience and also to develop connections, obviously meetup groups are really fabulous for that. And I tell my students to try to connect with meetup groups. But I also tell them there are a million nonprofit organizations out there that simply do not have the time or the background to work with any of their data beyond how many followers they have on Instagram. I have run an event. We've done it a few different times. It is now called the Data Charette. That's the name that we settled on. Charette is referring to creative activity in a compressed time period. It's a hackathon. It's a data hackathon. And we've done this several times where we hook up with local nonprofit organizations. They give us their data, which is usually in spreadsheets. One of them literally gave us pieces of paper with the data on it, and we stuck it into a spreadsheet. And then we take 2 days and we do the analysis for them. And at the end of the 2nd day, we say, this is what, they come to us with specific questions. And we take their data, we add what data we can, and we try to give them an answer to their question. The questions are usually really simple, like, are the donors the same people as the parents of the kids who attend our classes? And the answer is yes, but not the kids who attend often. The donors are a very specific subgroup of the kids who sign up. And then the Springfield Museum of Art said, should we be open on Sundays? And we were able to say to them, no, because the only time people come on Sundays is for the concerts that you do in the evening once a month. So you want to be open for the concerts, but you don't need the museum open any other Sunday. And so we do that stuff. I actually have formed a meetup group for the Data Charette. We're going to be I formed it, but haven't put it together yet. We're going to start finding ways to reach out more often to local nonprofits. This is a great thing to do because if you know anything at all about statistics, you know more than they do. And you have an opportunity to do something that's very useful for them. You build connections. They are potential employers. They actually know people who are potential employers. They all have boards of directors who usually have people who employ a lot of people on them. It's something you can put on your resume. If you do some good code, you can put it on your website or on GitHub. And it's an opportunity to reach out. And so I think of this as a great place. And this is where I'm going to strongly encourage people to use spreadsheets first, Jamovi second, and only go to R if you can't accomplish it in either one of those. Because I want to be able to share it in the easiest way possible for the nonprofits to look at it in the future and be able to tell what happened and make sense of it. So I think that's probably the best way. And that is the end of my presentation.
Are there limits on the size of the data set
I'm sure there are.
based on the hardware?
Yeah, but you know, it's the sort of thing that my work will never run up against. The largest data set I have ever worked with in standard psychological research is a few thousand cases. I work in the small data world, and so do the nonprofit organizations that I work with. It's a few hundred or a few thousand cases, so we don't run into those limits. Obviously, you're not going to want to do production machine learning on this.
Nice. Any other questions for Bart?
So, yeah, you mentioned, I guess, there's a Jamovi file format, you can send the whole thing to, not sure.
Oh, yeah, okay, so
to a
you
collaborator, and
say
they can open it in Jamovi. So
Right.
could you contrast that to maybe, I mean, something that I do is to deliver a collaborator an HTML file that I can help.
Mhm.
Could you say why you would
Okay.
do one versus
Ready?
the other?
This is easier. That's number one. This is so much easier. Yeah, I have to tell you, I have not yet really figured out how to do R Markdown. And if somebody sent me an R Markdown file, it's a struggle for me.
No, I send you an HTML file, you open it in the web browser.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you can do that. Yeah. But the idea is this lets them do the analysis. When you send them the
then
file.
they can interact with what you've done and redo it or change.
Yeah. They
something.
download the application. It's a small application. They open up the file, and it's an active file. You know, if they open it up, they can redo stuff. They can change stuff. So now Jamovi is still in beta. It's version 0.8, but they have a goal of being to version 1 like this month or next month. And they'll be adding a lot more functionality, and I think being able to share, for instance, static copies, or rather something like an R Markdown file may very well be in the future. But I like this because it's so simple for my colleagues, and that they also can do the analyses themselves, especially when we find out that we screwed up and included a couple of wrong cases, delete them, it updates automatically. So that's what I see as the advantage.
So what is the programming language they use to create that code?
I think it's HTML5 and it's just standard web app stuff.
If I remember right, the statistics is all done with R.
Yeah,
So
the
it's
data.
actually a web interface on top of R.
Well, it's not web. It's locally installed. It's an application on your computer. It would be really nice if it were a web app. And based on how they've done it, I see no reason why they couldn't be done. They've done it using web app technologies, and so I like to think it's a matter of time until it's available as a web app, which would be beautiful because, truthfully, I'm actually trying to teach my courses so people can do everything on a Chromebook, because that's what most of the people I work with, that's all they can afford. That or a 5-year-old Windows laptop.
If I understand you then well, they call R under the hood.
I'm
I
sorry?
believe so, yeah, I believe.
They call R under the hood.
I'm sorry.
So they call the R engine
Yeah.
to
Yes.
to generate the data.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So are they going to add more file formats than
I'm sure they are. What you need to know is right now it's just 3 guys, and this is their side gig. I persuaded them to put a donate button the other day, and I made the first donation. By the way, one of them's in the U.S. and 2 of them are Australia. Yeah, I'm sure it's going to get there, but this is also the sort of thing like, if you know how to do that, I'm sure they would appreciate, somebody else doing it. I hope to actually, I'm not an application developer, but I'm at a position where I can actually start hiring people to do stuff for this. Because this, I think, is sufficiently important that I'm willing to pay people my own money to get some of the functionality that I want in there, as opposed to waiting for, Jonathan, Damien, and Robbie to put it together on their own. That's the nice thing about open source. You can do that.
That's really interesting. It's really interesting, I think, as like a learning tool, or like a way for people to be exposed to statistics for the first time, and maybe those are interested to then onboard into the world of R or something.
Well, and that's just it, because you can copy everything, you can stick it into R. Now they say, now you know what the R code looks like, you know how it's supposed to function, and now you can start doing themes and variations using other packages that you're more familiar with.
Yeah, that was really interesting. All right, one more, and then we're gonna head out there.
Yep.
Yes, Dan.
I thought I would just comment on an interesting use case for me, where on a fairly regular basis, I am working to standardize the statistical methods we use for a certain kind of an analysis, where the vast majority of the people using that method are primarily SQL jockeys.
Right.
So I'm creating either a Shiny app or some sort of a template, a package that we distribute internally that has the protocols that you follow. Hey, run this function, then run this function. Once you've got your data set that looks like this, they're very skilled at building the data set really quickly, but they don't have as much experience with, what are the assumptions I need to check, and how do I run the analysis, and I can build all of that code. So for me, this is a really logical next step that's somewhere between as contained as a Shiny app that I would want to build, and as uncontained as a package I would want to distribute. Somewhere right in between,
middle ground
for your SQL jockey who needs to be able to produce a result to pass off to her boss, but who also needs to be able to do that analysis without having to check every single thing for somebody else. It's already been standardized. We've already decided this is the way we do this kind of analysis. And it gives her a GUI to look at.
Exactly.
Code.
That's pretty interesting. Great. Well, thank you so much, Bart.
Thank you. All right.